Welcome to the People, Planet, Profit podcast. My name's Hayley Jarick and I'm the CEO of the Supply Chain Sustainability School. And today I'm talking with Dylan Frank, who's the Managing Director of the Wumara Group. Dylan's a proud Indigenous man from the Ngemba Nation of Northwest New South Wales. Dylan is the founder and Managing Director of Wumara Group, a majority Indigenous-owned and managed survey and spatial businesses servicing the construction, property and infrastructure sectors. Dylan has a natural ability to communicate a clear vision and engage with people from all walks of life, with a proven history of building teams and business systems while strongly aligning business practices with positive social change for Indigenous Australians. Dylan has strong experience working with tier ones in the construction, property and infrastructure industries and delivering projects within the Indigenous sector. He specialises in liaising with Indigenous communities, elders, local land councils and key stakeholders to successfully deliver culturally sensitive projects, all while creating employment and educational opportunities for Indigenous outside of work. Outside of work, Dylan's passionate about all things in the ocean, sport, family and the mighty Sydney Roosters, but we won't hold that against him because today we've got Dylan here to talk about a couple of two different areas that we really want to get some hot tips from for our small business communities. The first one around hiring Indigenous staff and the second one about partnering with Indigenous businesses. So on that note, welcome Dylan.
Thanks, Hayley, and that's an awesome wrap.
It's always good to have someone pat you on the back occasionally, so it's all good. Thank you so much for being here and sharing all of your expertise with us. So I suppose let's start at the beginning, hiring Indigenous staff.
Yeah, so recently we've employed 6 Indigenous trainees, which was a great learning experience for myself and our business. Preparing for this podcast has sort of given me time to reflect on the experience and the benefits that we're already seeing. The first point I would probably like to make is that I think it's critical for businesses to employ a workforce that sort of reflects the community they work in. I don't think this is just, this doesn't just apply for Indigenous people, but, people from all walks of life, cultures, sexualities, genders, etc. I think there are a lot of well-documented benefits of having a diverse workforce, such things as like tapping into diverse experiences and opinions. Also, I think since we've employed these Indigenous trainees, we've been able to gain more insights into different Indigenous communities and families. Everyone knows everyone in community and, it can be beneficial, but also not so beneficial sometimes. So, lastly, I think the government and big business now include Indigenous employment targets on all contracts. So employing Indigenous staff is becoming more and more essential. There's a few different ways to employ Indigenous staff, and I think the first port of call is a good one is always to contact your local land council. They can point you in the right direction in terms of trusted organisations. There are a lot of Aboriginal controlled organisations who provide Indigenous recruitment services. To me, the recruitment world is pretty crazy and saturated, and I know there are a lot of people who say they can engage Indigenous staff, but it's essential to sort of select an organisation who won't just throw as many resumes at you, but will have sort of a partnership approach and provide things like mentors and ongoing support for your potential staff. There's also a lot of government assistance and subsidies to help businesses employ Indigenous staff, and I think that's something that a good organisation will help you, work your way through. I think, contact your LAUC, find a recruitment service provider that's probably a non-for-profit, Indigenous-owned and controlled, and 3, just ask about the government assistance they provide. In terms of partnering with Indigenous businesses, one of the main points I'd probably make is that Indigenous businesses are 100 times more likely to employ Indigenous staff. I believe this is a big driver for government Indigenous procurement policy and an enabler in helping closing the gap. I think a lot of people underestimate sort of how big and the variety of businesses within the sector. There's a pretty funny sort of stat that I read. You got to do your own research on though, but I think there's the Indigenous business sector provides about $5 billion worth of revenue annually, which is bigger than the beer economy. I don't know. Yeah, definitely do all that. But yeah, so it's very broad and there are a lot of different types of businesses. I know a lot of people just think of your sort of art and cultural businesses, but there's a lot of different businesses in sort of, construction, infrastructure, etc. I think partnering with Indigenous business also helps the business sector and helps Indigenous people participate and interact on equal terms with non-Indigenous Australians. I think this really helps build understanding and trust and will go a long way on the road to reconciliation. And again, a lot of government contracts now require at least 1.5% of the contract value to be spent on Indigenous suppliers, which a lot of the time is passed on to subcontractors and smaller business. So it's becoming more and more essential to engage with Indigenous businesses. How do you engage with Indigenous business? There's a nationwide organisation called Supply Nation that certify and provide a business directory for Indigenous businesses. This is where, government and member organisations, which include a majority of big business in Australia, procure Indigenous services. So you just jump on their website, search any services you sort of require. Full disclosure, my partner works there, so no, that's good. I think that's sort of a good, short and sharp overview on Indigenous employment and business engagement.
Yeah.
That was awesome. Thanks for joining me, Dylan.
Thanks, Hayley. It's been a pleasure.
And thanks for joining us on the People Planet Profit podcast. Until next time, bye.